2011 can be considered a landmark year for Kirby, bringing new life into a series that for a while there, it felt like it was tossed aside. And that's all thanks to one game, Kirby's Return to Dreamland, taking key elements from older games and pushing them to a new extreme. Expansive levels filled with different copy abilities, gimmicks, places to explore, and a story that, while still simple, wasn't afraid of getting more in your face than before with twists and reveals along the way. It truly felt like the next evolution for the series. So they made the same game 3 more times. Or at least, that's what some people think. The modern era of Kirby, starting in Return to Dreamland all the way until Forgotten Land went full 3D, is often considered one of the best periods in the franchise, filled with some of the best games of not only Kirby, but platformers in general. But to many, it also revealed one of the huge issues that plagued the entire series: the lack of originality. As a series of mainly 2D platformers, Kirby has stayed as a very consistent series, not really evolving in substantial ways, and these 4 games are some of the worst examples of that, with some even going as far as to compare these games to the new Sub series. Now, personally speaking, if you say that, I think you're delusional, and at that point it would be better to just call me a slur, but I can sorta see it. All these games play the same, they all have the same general art style, all of them have similar themes like grass, water, volcano, and all of them have new characters without arms. And it seems to some extent HAL also knew how similar these games are, so in order to easily stand out from the rest, they introduce these. What I like to call gimmick abilities. From the powerful super abilities to the versatile friend actions, and Mouthful mode too, cause why not. All modern Kirby games have introduced a new gimmick to change up the gameplay and give that specific title its own identity. But did they really work? Or were they nothing more than just a feature to put in the back of the box? Well, let's take a look back and see. Welcome to Kirbymon, an entire month celebrating the long history of Kirby as a tribute to this pink Mouthful that changed my and so many people's lives. And today, we're talking about Kirby's gimmick abilities. So without further introduction, let's get right to it. Our story starts once again in 2011 with Kirby's Return to Dreamland and its super abilities. Before, games like this were part of the core gameplay. Something like the Dark Matter trilogy changed the way they approach copy abilities in general with its combo system, while a game like Squid Squad had its own gimmick, the copy palette, present at all times. Return to Dreamland is different, as in for the majority of the game it's just your standard Kirby gameplay until you enter a room with a special enemy. Coming from another dimension, these enemies give you the super abilities. More powerful versions of regular abilities. There's Ultra Sword, creating a random giant sword useful for cutting everything in its path. Monster Flame, that summons a giant fire dragon that zooms across the screen burning everything it touches. Flare Beam, that allows you to control a giant electric ball for destroying things and turning on beam laps. Grand Hammer, that grows your hammer in 3 separate states, creating shockwaves and hammering down giant stakes. And finally, Snowball, engulfing Kirby in a giant snowball that rolls down enemies and knocks down bowling pins. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but the gimmick in question is making everything huge. There were also 2 other abilities who were supposed to get the super treatment, but for one reason or another they got cut. Those being Cutter, which had a full hat made, and Spark, who only had his ability icon made. And split on the super abilities. On one hand, there's a part of my brain that goes, funny big ability makes go GP. But look at them then critically, they're okay, I guess. The novelty of feeling powerful goes away pretty fast, and for the first half of the game, they don't go past move right, press button, kill everyone, repeat. But that's not to say they don't do fun puzzles with them. Flare Beam and Snowball got some of the best, with having to navigate the giant electric balls and having to time the initial shake to knock down all the bowling pins and not get crushed in the process. But they are very basic compared to what future games did with their own gimmicks. But what they lack in creativity, they more than make up by how unintrusive they are. Aside from the boss fights, if you want, you can skip every single super ability section easily, and if you don't skip them, they don't really take that long to finish. And when they're done, you get access to the Another Dimension stages, little challenge rooms that remove your copy ability and puts normal Kirby to the test, and those stages are so much fun. And if there was any complaint of their length, Return Deluxe made the abilities even faster. It might seem weird that the best part of the super abilities is how ignorable they are, but as you will see later, pacing is a big part of why modern Kirby is so fun to me, and these super ability sections do a perfect job at checking out the gameplay without feeling like an annoyance. So overall, I feel like they were a great addition to the game, which is the complete opposite of what I think of Similar deal at play here. During Kirby's regular adventure to the floating islands of Regalia, at certain points he will encounter a miracle fruit. If Kirby decides to eat this fruit, he will be granted the Hypernova ability. Greatly enhances Kirby's inhale ability, turning into an endless black hole capable of inhaling and moving almost anything. And I'm gonna be so for real for a second here. I just do not like Hypernova. Well, why not? In concept, it's a great evolution not only the super abilities but also an evolution to ideas not really explored since the first game in the series, Kirby's Dreamland. Without having to account for all the different abilities you could have at that moment, it leaves the game designed to focus so much more on action puzzles that take advantage of Hypernova. Swinging wrecking balls to destroy walls, moving cars to get access to goodies, putting Snowman's head in the right bodies, Sex Turnip, all puzzles that are way more involved than anything the super abilities did. My only problem is just how slow and boring it is. Everything just takes so long, man. I don't want Kirby to become something like Sonic or Mega Man X, but there's a certain smoothness that comes from these games that I love, something that the super abilities understood by making them snappy and fast to use. Hypernova on the other hand is the opposite of that. A perfect example comparing Hypernova and super abilities would be the bosses. In Return Dreamland, there were only 2 bosses that required the super abilities, but were more power trips more than anything. There wasn't really any depth other than Kirby screaming and being raw. Deluxe has a whopping 6 bosses where you use Hypernova. All of them are way more complex than before, having to dodge attacks, inhale specific objects, and time your counterattacks. Again, an evolution of Dreamland's 1 bosses, in concept, because it's just so slow and boring. Even Dreamland 1 was faster. Almost every attack in that game can be inhaled, made the fights more dynamic. In Deluxe it's just wait, inhale, wait, speed, repeat. Just like the rest of Hypernova, it's just a pace-breaking slog to get through. I will give it this one thing. The final boss using Hypernova is probably the best use of Hypernova in the entire game. The music is awesome, you feel that sense of power more than anything before, and they actually expand upon the speeding gameplay by having you aim with the gyro. Which, fun fact, you can also use the circle pad. That took me like 10 years to figure out you can do. It's not much, but it's fun. So in the end, do I think Hypernova accomplished its goal to make Deluxe stand out from Return Dreamland? No. People still think this game is the same as before. Hypernova just isn't that memorable. The design is just Kirby but rainbow, and it's not even part of the box art. Which might sound dumb, but I think the gimmick being part of the box art is important. This box doesn't tell you anything that makes this game stand out compared to the other Kirby games. You look at the Return Dreamland box and go, wow, Kirby with big sword. You look at the Planet Robot and say, this game is fucking awesome. Which is my exact thoughts about Planet Robot gimmick, the Robobot armor. This thing is simply fucking awesome. So, Planet Robot, right? Now that's a game that stands out from the rest. The entire premise about Hellman's worst company taking over and mechanizing Popstar. So the gimmick correlates with that premise. After defeating an invader armor, Kirby gets access to a Robobot armor. A giant mech that has Kirby's inhale ability, letting it transform into a more powerful version of certain abilities. It's not like super abilities which only let you use one ability during one specific section. The robot can change at any time just like how regular Kirby can. This already greatly expands from the other 2 gimmicks as the levels can utilize multiple mechanics at once. The second main change is how it's distributed. Hypernova and super abilities have their designated rooms built around them. Robot still has some rooms that are unique to it, but it can also show up at any point during a regular level. Sometimes it has a secret door as a reward for solving a puzzle. This allows the robot to be more than just a gimmick. Now it's a full-on gameplay mechanic, something the game and its levels can use at maximum potential. The robot itself just feels so good too. It's a perfect combination of powerful yet useful, something like the super abilities feel too powerful, you just kill everything on screen without thinking it. Robot still plays like a regular Kirby game, you just are bigger and can destroy and interact with objects that you couldn't as normal Kirby. The different abilities are also really fun on their own. From the get-go we have Soar and Cutter, both for countering metal chains or giant wood blocks connecting the background and foreground. Spark and Beam generate electricity through wires for opening doors. Bomb launches mini robot bombs that can fit in tight spaces to access out-of-reach switches. Fire burns things, ice freezes things. Parasol lets you fly for a short time and dispels gas clouds. Stone lets you move heavy objects. Mike actually has a real moveset that lets you shoot sound waves waking up turtles. And finally ESP creates big orbs. There's also 2 special abilities that drastically change the level, closer to how Hypernova and super abilities worked, Jet and Wheel. Jet turns the game into a side-scroller shoot 'em up because Hal loves shoot 'em ups, and Will turns the game into a 2D Sonic Boost game. There's so much variety. It really keeps things interesting at all times while following regular Kirby's level design rules of using different abilities to create interesting puzzles along the way. But my favorite thing they do is when they make you play a section of the level as normal Kirby and then make you replay the section as Robot, really showing the contrast of power between the two forms. And I think you get it by now. Player Robot just does so much with all the different robot abilities and they nail it every time, it's crazy. This game is often considered to be the single best Kirby game ever, and I think most of the praise should go to Robobot armor. It's the perfect representation of what a Gimmick ability should be, something that instantly stands out, preserves the usual gameplay you are used to, and gets incorporated in genius ways that fit both the level design and the overall theme of the game. I sure do hope the next Gimmick is just as good. It isn't. Oh brother, I got another video where Nico talks shit about Saturdays, what a surprise! Okay, hold up a sec. I do have positive things to say about the Friends abilities, as I think they are the logical evolution from the robot armor. Think about it. Super abilities introduce the concept of powerful abilities using specific sections. Hypernova expands on the concept by making the sections longer and more complex with more puzzles and bosses. Robot armor expands even more, making it so it appears way more frequently in the levels and giving it multiple ability to change up the gameplay instead of constantly just doing one thing. Then here come the friend abilities that go beyond just a gimmick and instead are a core part of the game, something that is always present at every moment. I think that's Starlight's main issue with the story mode. The gimmick is so ingrained into the game that the level design needs to keep up with it, and for the main part it just doesn't. Wait, I'm getting too ahead here. We haven't talked about what even is the gimmick in question, so let's do that. Starlight combines multiple aspects of previous game to create its own gimmick. Similar to Kirby 64, Friends abilities is all about combining multiple abilities into one. To do this, you will need a helper to help you out in the combining process, just like the ones from Superstar. Friend abilities come in three forms. The most common type is power effects. You can give any weapon type ability, like sword or cutter, one of 5 different elemental styles, those being Blizzard, Blaster, Sizzle, Splash, or Zap. This will power up the weapon ability with that certain element. It even changes how some moves work, like how Blaster Bomb makes it so you can fly by holding the bombs in your hand. Then you have special skills, which come in various forms. Some are combo attacks like combining water, ice, and stone to make a curling attack. Then you have moves that help the team like Artist's Still Life or Parasol's Chumbrella. And you also have power up versions of one-time use abilities like Festival Dance or Fatal Curries. Yes, every single one of them has a silly name, and yes, I do love them. And finally, the friend actions. Similar to Jet or Will in Robot, these are only activated in specific levels and act more as a small gameplay switch up. There's Friend Circle, which automatically moves you destroying everything in your path and can do a little jump. Friend Train, which is the exact same except you can run up walls and have a funny hat. Friend Bridge, which makes a bridge that you can control up and down to help kiddies reach doors. Friend Star, that puts you in yet another shoot 'em up section because it's a Kirby game, but this time you have full control and can use different abilities for different types of shots. And the Starlight Sparkler, which is the same thing as the Friend Star but in 3D. Yeah, a lot more complex than the previous gimmicks. Okay, so to make everything simpler, first, friend actions. They are kinda ass. They're not as fun as Robot's equivalent and go completely against the co-op aspect of this game. But I don't mind them, they are fun enough distractions, so we can get those out of the discussion. Next, special skills. I respect what they were going on. It's a way to switch up your strategy during combat or solve interesting puzzles. And for the puzzles part, I love it. Things like using curling to hit a sideways peg or Chumbrella to block out the water. It's smart. But for combat, they are a complete failure, I'm afraid. Since they require you to stand still and combine your attacks, it's just more worth it to just hit the enemies in a normal way. Which is probably what your 3 helpers are already doing, so if you really want to do a team attack, you gotta hold up, wait till your helper goes, hold on, let me help you buddy, and all the enemies are already dead. Not to mention, how would you even discover some of these moves like Rising Sizzler or Thunder Splash? The game only teaches you these moves by these huge hint icons, but you can turn those off. And let's be honest, we all probably did not to spoil the solution to every single puzzle. And even then, in those places where the game teaches you those moves, you don't need them! There's nothing special to most of them, they just apply elemental damage that every one of your other moves already has. Why would I set up this ancient dark ritual instead of just pressing the funny attack button a couple times? And then we have the big one, power effects. So first off, I wanna give it props for just how in depth and how many different interactions the elements have. like freezing waterfalls which you can then melt, cutting bombs with fire weapons which drops them down while making them explode, but my favorite interactions are with the bosses, watering Diddy's fruit to make them edible again, pulling Wispy with a life, freezing Twin Crackle, nullifying the Mage Sister big attacks for free damage, and some more here and there. Between these interactions and the different moves you get from each element, I like how much thought there can be into choosing your lineup, especially in a mode like the Ultimate Choice. The first time I went through on the hardest difficulty, I experimented a lot with my team to figure out what are the best elements I wanted to go with. Now after playing the game for way longer than I should, I can easily beat Soul Metal with no abilities, but the point still stands. But that's as far as my compliments go, because in the end, it doesn't matter. It all falls thanks to power scaling. Oh yeah, I'm going there. Kirby's size is simply too easy for how powerful you are in this game. I know it's a Kirby game, it has to be easy, but Friend Abilities just drove so much balance of normal Kirby gameplay is wild. This series is all about constantly changing your abilities, exploring each level in your own unique way, but under the surface, every room is designed with specific abilities in mind, abilities that enhance the level design and make the pace so dynamic. For more info, look at this video. Stylish ruins that because of the power effects. Because they're so overpowered, you just kill anything your way, including abilities. And from this huge selection of abilities, most people will only stick to the weapon abilities since those are the only ones that can be powered up. Every other ability you would need for something like a puzzle, well, you can just throw a friend hard and make the helper do it for you. These beats abilities like Beetle and Suplex who simply don't have much of a place in your team. Bless Sword, that's my favorite ability, but I don't think it's normal to run around the whole game with the very first ability you see and be rewarded for it. So in the end, Stylize goes from the game with the most amount of abilities and things to do with those abilities to one of the most boring and samey of the series. That's why casuals don't like this game while hardcore fans do. A regular person has no incentive to switch off once they find something that works, so they can go the whole game pressing forward without a care in the world. But you can discover all those options. That's what the fans of Star Allies did. It bothers me because I can totally see the potential of this gimmick, but the game is just not built for it. The level design is too simplistic and the bosses are too easy. I just can't bother to go that extra length that makes Star Allies special. Or at least I can't on the main mode. And that's all to say I love the extra modes. They already mentioned Ultimate Choice, Guest Star and Heroes in Another Dimension. Here is where Starlight's friend ability system shines. When you are forced to stick with one ability, you can truly experiment with all different combinations, especially while playing as useless abilities like Fighter. Relying on the helpers becomes the puzzle itself instead of a way to break the game. Heroes in Another Dimension also does that part way better. The level design is perfectly adjusted to take advantage of both your ability and what your allies can do with you. Probably because it makes you play as the Dream Friends, which are way more complex than the average copy ability. If Starlight's wasn't designed like a regular Kirby game and instead went even harder with the friend abilities, I think more people would admire the game for what it does, because frankly, Starlight lacks personality in almost every other department. Despite having the most in-depth gimmick in this video, people just saw it as yet another Kirby game, and I feel like that perspective could have changed if it just went a little more hard. Oh yeah, we're not done yet. Despite being created in a whole other dimension, Forgotten Land continues a lot of things that previous modern games did, from the level design to its own gimmick ability. While entering the new world, Kirby gains the ability to stretch his body more than he ever could do before, allowing him to inhale regular objects, turning them into Mouthful mode. During the levels you will find Mouthful mode objects sprinkled around, mainly for puzzles or specific level segments. These include Car Mount, allowing you to run over enemies and obstacles at high speed, Cone Mount, letting you pierce certain objects and enemies by following them upside down, Light Bulb Mount, that turns off and on to light up dark areas and change batteries, Ring Mount, that shoots huge wings of gust for moving windmills or used to push a boat across the water, Scissor Mount to get to higher areas, Stairs Mount for the same thing but can also break walls, Vending Machine Mount to launch cans of soda at enemies and metal boxes, Water Balloon Mount to clean dirt and grow plants, Dome Mount to open a dome, Storage Mount to open a locker, okay, no, all them are winners, and the mandatory gameplay switchers Arch Mount, which lets you glide through the game, and finally Roller Coaster Mount, which turns the game into Subway Surfers. Mouthful mode is a sleeper gimmick, one that some people wouldn't even consider as part of this discussion, but it does its job almost perfectly. It does it back to something closer to how Robobot did his gimmick, as it is there as a form to complement the level design. It differences from Robobot by placing a much lower priority in how much you use Mouthful mode. Because you can so easily get in and out of Mouthful mode, the game takes it into advantage by making the specific points you need the transformation much shorter and snappier. And it's important to know the role this gimmick has in the game. Why is it so much less prevalent than before? Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the very first 3D game in the series, so its main focus is translating the usual gameplay to 3D. Mouthful mode is just there to take advantage of the 3D space, create wacky situations that you could only achieve in this new dimension, so it makes sense why it's not as shocking or impactful as previous gimmicks. There's one big argument against it though. In a game that heavily restricts the amount of abilities you can play around with, it's almost offensive how close some of these transformations are to abilities we had in the past. Abilities that would have been awesome in 3D. Car could have been wheel, cone could have been stone, water balloon could have been water, light bulb mouth could have been lights. That would actually be really cool to bring back, but you get the point. To some, it feels like Mouthful mode isn't adding anything to the gameplay, but rather is bringing back old concepts in more boring and restrictive ways, and while I see their mindset, I just don't think people realize how different Mouthful mode is to normal abilities. With normal abilities, you have to design the entire game around them. A player can have any ability at any time and you need to be ready for that. Being its first 3D game, it's understandable why there are so few abilities and why their moveset is so much more limited. It makes it easier to test and make levels around. They can then take that more limited pool of abilities to squeeze every last juice of them for interesting level design. Mouthful mode does the same in its own way. If you notice, most transformations are actually downgrades to your core moveset, and that's the neat part. Since you are so restricting what you can do in these forms, they can make the whole level segment based around them, and unlike abilities, most of the time you are forced to engage with Mouthful mode, you are forced to race around as a car mouth, you are forced to use stairs mouth to reach a higher ledge, you are forced to use ring mouth to navigate the water. And all that is to make a more dynamic and curated level design that takes advantage of both the 3D space and your current transformation. That is the magic of Mouthful mode. And if you're still not convinced, just go watch my 2-hour round where I talk about every single fucking polygon of this game. So in the end, after looking at all these different gimmicks, I came up with a different mindset than what I started with. Weirdly enough, I feel like I both lost and gained respect for these gimmicks. In one hand, it really made me appreciate how all these different gimmicks go about making unique and interesting gameplay. How super abilities might not have the most depth but are the fastest and more flashy. How Hypernova might be slow but expands on Kirby's scoring hell ability that hasn't been explored ever since the very first game. How Robot perfectly combines power and utility to create a gimmick perfect for the theme. How the friend abilities are the most robust and in-depth gimmick in the series. And how Mouthful mode is a subtle but insanely smart addition to their first fully 3D game. But on the other hand, do any of these gimmicks really achieve its goal of making every game unique and special in their own way? And I think that's a no. The Robobot is by far the most eye-catching one of the series, but that's because it fits with the mechanized aesthetic. Mouthful mode is also a fan favorite for the casuals for how funny and silly it looks, but does anyone really go and say, oh, Forgotten Land? That's the game with Mouthful mode, right? No, no one says that. And the game with the most integrated gimmick in its base gameplay, stylized? Well, that's the #1 example everyone points to when saying all Kirby games are the same. So, do they even really matter? I still think so. While I now see if future Kirby games want to be more unique from each other, they should focus on grander things like a theme or art style, I still appreciate these gimmicks for what they are. More fun ways to play some of the greatest Kirby games the series has to offer. Forgotten Land proved that even if they weren't necessary for success, the game would have already been a masterpiece with or without its gimmick, they do have a reason to exist. They are that extra spice that you might not notice, but makes the whole meal a lot more wonderful. Well, that's what I think. What do you guys think about these gimmick abilities? Let me know down in the comments below. And fun little fact for the people who made it to the end. Did you know the Japanese Kirby website lists these abilities as special abilities? They even include some other weird ones like the final battle abilities, the epic gun transformations, the air raid machine for some reason, and some others. Who knows, if you guys enjoyed the discussion, maybe we can talk about the other special abilities. You guys are not ready for a Bravo abilities rant. But that's all from me, and I'll see you on the next ride.